been a few days since I've made a video, and it's not because I'm being lazy, because time is a valuable resource that I don't have a lot of, and I choose to spend my time doing other things. But also, I don't want to make these videos just for the sake of making them. When I post a video, I want it to be genuine, I want it to be authentic, I want it to be real. My goal has never been to be famous, which I certainly am not, but for whatever future purposes these videos might ever serve, that has never been my intention. My intention is to help shed light in areas where there might be some darkness. And with that being said, I'm fixing to get into a subject that was raised a few weeks ago. One of my friends and viewers asked me to speak about the existence of hell. Most specifically, the question was, when did people start going to hell? And if they're not there now, when did they start, or when will they start? And so it took me a little time to read and into that particular subject. There are quite a number of ideas concerning the afterlife, and I think I would like to start this conversation off by saying I don't know the answer to that question with a 100% certainty, okay? But what I do know is what I'm going to share in this video, and I'll be careful to explain, at least try to note the differences between what I know the Bible communicates to us versus what I think, what my opinion of certain things are. But what I do know is in the Old Testament, the idea of hell is very much alive, it's very much real. They call it Sheol and Gehenna. Specifically in the New Testament, Jesus talks about Gehenna and how that's where all of the carcasses and dead bodies and stuff, and all the waste and feces and everything. People that didn't get a tomb, thieves or murderers or whatever, and all that had dead animals and stuff, and it's constantly on fire. It's basically a big pit, like a valley, outside of the city walls of Jerusalem, and it's on fire constantly, 24/7. They're burning all that nastiness and stuff, and there's wild dogs eating on stuff. There's crows, ravens, whatever, pecking on stuff, buzzards, vultures, whatever they had back then. So, and Jesus describes in the New Testament, hell as being a permanent separation from God, and describes it, being there as kind of like living in that valley, so to speak, for eternity. In the Old Testament, though, when they're talking about Sheol, this idea of hell, it is definitely described on many occasions as being a place of being a desolate place, a place where no hope exists, where there's nothing but sorrow, nothing but torment for the soul. It's described a number of ways, in the Old Testament as being like the ultimate, place a person could be as it concerns despair, depravity, and hopelessness. So, what I believe is the case is that we have three different places, I think, three different, I'm going to say this loosely and I'll explain it better, three different versions of heaven, okay? And it's possible that there are 2, maybe 3 different versions of hell. And let me get into that and explain that some before you start casting judgment. So we have in the Old Testament, the idea of heaven is what I believe Jesus described as paradise when he told the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise. I believe that paradise, as Jesus was referring to at that moment, is I think he was talking about where all of the righteous people in the Old Testament were, where their souls were. And it wasn't until after Jesus's death and resurrection was complete that all of those souls, including that thief on the cross, went to be with God the Father. Those souls could not necessarily, I shouldn't even say necessarily, I don't believe those souls could be in the presence of God yet because Jesus' sacrifice was not complete. See, when Jesus died, his sacrifice covered all sin, past, present, future, all sin, once and for all, forever. And until his sacrifice was made, the ultimate sacrifice, Jesus Christ, that had to be done before even the people that God found to be righteous in the Old Testament could be in his presence eternally. That atonement had to be made. But I do not believe that those righteous people that obeyed God and served God went to hell when God called them righteous. Like Abraham obeyed God and it was credited to him as a righteousness. That's the scripture, concerning when Abraham obeyed God and was going to sacrifice his son Isaac. But that being said, I believe there was paradise, and then Jesus came, and then now there is heaven as we would think of heaven today. Well, then at the end of time, according to Revelation, there is this new earth, new heaven and new earth that will be established at the end of time. And so we have an Old Testament version of heaven, have a New Testament version of heaven, and we're going to have a future version of heaven. And so when I say there are different versions, I just want y'all to know that's what I'm talking about for those that might be familiar with where I'm going with all that. But I think the same probably exists somewhat on the other side of the spectrum. To address the question directly, I do think that it is possible that whatever version of hell exists now is probably most likely the same version that existed even in the Old Testament during that time, because to be unrighteous is to be unrighteous. Only the people that God considered to be righteous individuals, only they were the ones that would have gone to paradise. But again, they couldn't be in heaven where God was until Jesus' sacrifice was fulfilled, until all that was said and done. But for those that were unrighteous, I'm not really sure there was any kind of separation. I think if the way I interpret what the Bible says, and there are many things, way too many for me to address in this video, as far as hell is concerned, and all the different ways that it's described and circumstances around it, I don't think there was any kind of separation. I don't think it made a difference at all if someone died that God found to be unrighteous in their life here on earth. I don't believe there was any special holding place where they go from one version of hell and graduate to another version of hell, any more than I think that they were in hell and died unrighteously and hadn't had a chance to go to heaven. That that is, I've heard over the years where people say that when Jesus took the keys from Satan, you know, the death, hell, and the grave, that he went to hell and preached to everybody that was in hell and they had an option. I don't personally agree with that. I don't think that's the case. I think when Jesus Jesus, you know, gave us kind of a picture of what things looked like in the example that he gave about the man that went to hell and the man that was in paradise, and there was a great, you know, chasm between the two, a river, a valley, I can't remember exactly the word that was used, whatever it was, that separated the two. And the guy that was in torment, you know, said, man, if you would just dip your finger in that water, you know, and just touch my tongue with it, you know, that would give me some relief from what it is that I'm dealing with over here. And he said, well, I can't do that. And so the man said, well, will you at least go back and tell my family? And the response that was given here, you know, the man that was in torment said, will you at least go back and tell my family that this place is real? And the response that was given is if they don't listen to the people, the prophets, the people that I have already sent to tell them about this place on earth, then they're not going to listen to me sending someone back claiming to be that they're speaking on your behalf. You know, it's God's making it clear to us, Jesus is making it clear that there is, before the New Testament, I say the New Testament, before Jesus' sacrifice, his death and his resurrection is complete, that that those people that are there forever. And the people that in this life choose to reject God's messengers are going to be there also. You know, that there is no changing that fate. So I think it's safe to assume that there is only, you know, two versions of hell, so to speak, versus the three versions of heaven: paradise, heaven, and then the new earth and new heaven, versus just hell, Old Testament all the way up through present time. But the second version of hell, I'm again loosely using the word version, second version of hell is the lake of fire, which at the end of time, when new heaven and new earth is created, we call it New Jerusalem. New heaven and new earth is created also at somewhere about that same time. Hell and all of its inhabitants, including the devil and all of his demons, will all be cast into the lake of fire, and that's where it'll be forever. So to kind of help clear up the differences between these versions of heaven and hell, I want to make sure y'all understand that's what I'm talking about. I'm trying to keep this in as plain and loose and easy to understand terms as I can. But so as far as when did people start going to hell, it was the very first person that died in sin went to hell. And I believe they go to the same hell today that, you know, Old Testament figures went to, if they died and went to hell. So I think that God has always judged a man's heart the same way. Old Testament and New Testament, the law served a purpose, and it is not gone. It has been fulfilled through Jesus' sacrifice. But the law in and of itself, Jesus made it very clear, was not enough to redeem a man's soul. So there had to be some kind of separation, even for those that did follow the law and whose hearts were in the right place. There still had to be some kind of separation between them, their souls, and God's presence until Jesus' sacrifice was complete. So I hope that answers the question for you guys about that might be curious on the subject. If you have any more questions or other comments about the subject, please, as always, like the video, subscribe to my channel. I've got some more videos coming today. I've got a few answers that I'll be putting out there. So I hope it's helped. I hope it's been informative, challenging, encouraging. Love you guys. Till next time.